Welcome to the deep dive. We've gone through the reports, the regs, the research, all of it. And today we're tackling a really critical one for trucking, the 2025 Hours of Service Regulations, HOS, as everyone calls them. Our goal here isn't just to, list the rules. We're diving into the theme of regulatory changes and future-proofing the industry. We want to pull out the key updates, the ones that show how the FMCSA is trying to balance safety, which is non-negotiable, with the need for more flexibility on the road. So if you're running a fleet, dispatching, or even just curious how stuff gets delivered, you'll want to understand what's shifting.
Absolutely. And maybe let's kick off with the basics just briefly. What are HOS rules? They come from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, and fundamentally they're about managing fatigue. They set limits on how long commercial drivers can work, how long they can actually drive within that work time, and critically, how much rest they need to reset everything. You could almost think of it like a mandatory nap time for truckers. It's the law. It's all about safety.
Okay, mandatory nap time. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that safety angle. Why are these rules considered so essential? What are the big risks they're trying to prevent?
Well, the biggest risk, and the sources really hammer this home, is driver fatigue. It's simple but deadly. When drivers are tired, their attention drops, they might have microsleeps, those little nods you don't even realize. Their decision-making gets worse, reaction times slow way down. We're talking potentially 50% slower. That's incredibly dangerous, obviously, for the driver, but for everyone else on the road, too.
Right, it affects everyone.
Exactly. But it's not just about preventing crashes. For the trucking companies, for the fleets, HOS compliance is huge for business survival. It's about protecting their safety record, their CSA score. That's compliance, safety, accountability. A bad score, that means higher insurance, maybe losing contracts because shippers won't risk it, and huge liability if an accident does happen.
So it's foundational. Safety isn't just a rule, it's baked into the business model.
Precisely.
Okay, so with safety as the baseline, let's get into the core limits. The things that haven't changed for 2025, the bedrock rules. First up, the 11-hour driving limit. This one's pretty straightforward. After a driver takes 10 consecutive hours off duty, they can drive for a maximum of 11 hours. That's it. Still the gold standard, not changing.
Correct. 11 hours driving max within that cycle.
But then comes the one that causes all the headaches, the one they're trying to tweak. The 14-hour on-duty limit. Explain that clock, because it starts ticking the second they log in, right?
Exactly right. The moment a driver starts their workday, could be fueling, paperwork, inspections, anything work-related, that 14-hour clock starts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop. Once 14 consecutive hours have passed since they started, they cannot drive a commercial vehicle again until they take another 10 consecutive hours off duty.
Even if they only drove for, say, 6 hours within that 14.
Doesn't matter. If that 14-hour window closes, driving is done until the 10-hour reset. It's a hard stop.
Okay, so that 14-hour limit is the real constraint everyone's working against.
It is. You can stop driving within the 14 hours, take breaks, wait around, but you can't usually pause the clock itself. And that's where the 2025 changes come in. They're trying to give drivers ways to manage that 14-hour window a bit more effectively, or pause it without compromising the safety aspect.
All right, let's dive into those flexibility tweaks then, because this sounds like the FMCSA responding directly to what the industry's been asking for.
It certainly seems that way. Let's start with the 30-minute break rule. This used to be a real pain point. Drivers have to take a 30-minute break after they've driven for 8 hours cumulatively. Not necessarily 8 hours straight, but 8 total hours behind the wheel.
Okay, what's the change?
The big update is how you can take that break.
Yeah.
It no longer has to be purely off-duty. Now, that 30 minutes can be satisfied while off-duty, yes, or the sleeper berth, or even while doing non-driving on-duty tasks, like waiting to be loaded or unloaded at a dock.
Oh, that's significant. So waiting time can count now.
Yes. Before, if you sat at a dock for 2 hours, tough luck. That didn't count as your mandatory break. Now, as long as you're not driving for 30 consecutive minutes, that can satisfy the requirement. It makes that waiting time potentially productive towards compliance without forcing another stop later.
That makes a lot of operational sense. Okay, what about the really big one everyone's talking about, the sleeper berth flexibility, the 73 split? How does that tackle the 14-hour clock?
Right, the 73 split. This is probably the most impactful change for long-haul flexibility. It modifies the required 10-hour off-duty period. Instead of needing 10 consecutive hours off, drivers can now split it into 2 qualifying periods. One period must be at least 7 consecutive hours spent in the sleeper berth.
Okay, 7 hours minimum in the bunk.
Correct. The other period needs to be at least 3 consecutive hours. This second one can be taken either off-duty or in the sleeper berth.
So 7 and 3 adds up to 10.
Exactly. Both periods must add up to at least 10 hours total. And here's the crucial part. When done correctly, neither of these qualifying rest periods counts against the 14-hour driving window. The shorter 3-hour minimum break effectively pauses the 14-hour clock.
Okay, walk me through an example. Let's say our driver, Frank, starts his day. How does he use this?
Right. Frank starts his 14-hour clock at, say, 7 a.m. He drives for a few hours. Then maybe around 2 p.m., he knows he's got a long wait at a receiver, maybe 3 or 4 hours. He can choose to take his shorter 3-hour minimum break then, off-duty or in the sleeper. That pauses his 14-hour clock at the 7-hour mark, from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
So the clock stops ticking while he takes that 3-hour break.
Precisely. Let's say he finishes that break at 5 p.m. His 14-hour clock restarts, with 7 hours already used.
Yeah.
He still has 7 hours left on his 14-hour duty clock. Now he drives for another, let's say, 5 hours till 10 p.m. He's now driven a total of, let's adjust that.
Yeah.
If he drove maybe 4 hours before the break and 5 hours after, that's 9 hours driving. He's used 7 hours plus 5 hours, so 12 hours of his 14-hour on-duty window. Now, he needs his main sleep period. He takes the required 7-hour minimum break in the sleeper berth. Because he's successfully completed both parts of the split, 3 hours plus 7 hours equals 10 hours total rest, he's fully compliant. He effectively stretched his working window over a longer period from 7 a.m., potentially past 10 p.m., without violating the 14-hour rule because the 3-hour break paused it.
Okay, so it doesn't give him more driving time, still capped at 11 hours total, but it lets him fit that driving time into the 14-hour duty limit more strategically around delays and appointments.
That's exactly it. It's about managing the duty clock, not extending the driving limit.
But, I mean, that sounds complicated. Doesn't this increase the chances of messing up the logs?
Oh, absolutely. That's the trade-off. Huge
Yep.
flexibility gain, yes, but it demands perfect logging. If Frank messes up, maybe his first break was only 2 hours and 50 minutes or he logged it wrong, the whole split is invalid. Then an inspector looks back and says, wait, your 14-hour clock never actually paused. Suddenly he could be hours over his 14-hour limit retroactively.
Ouch. Instant violation.
Instant violation, likely an out-of-service order right there on the roadside. So the tech, the ELDs, and driver training become even more critical to use this split correctly.
Makes sense. Okay, one more flexibility point before we move on. Adverse driving conditions, bad weather, unexpected pileups. What happens then?
Yeah, this is a bit of a safety valve. The adverse driving conditions exception acknowledges that sometimes stuff happens you couldn't predict. If a driver encounters conditions like a sudden blizzard, or maybe a major crash shuts down the highway unexpectedly, things they couldn't have known when they were dispatched, they get a bit more time.
How much time?
They can extend their maximum driving limit and their on-duty limit by up to 2 hours. So they could potentially drive for 13 hours within a 16-hour duty day.
Ah, so it extends both clocks by 2 hours.
Correct. But, and this is key, it's only to allow them to complete the run or reach a safe location. It's not a bonus to get further down the road. And they must record it in their log, explaining exactly what the adverse condition was. You can't just claim it lightly.
Got it. A necessary exception for unpredictable events. Okay, let's shift gears now to the short haul folks. The local delivery drivers, the regional guys. The sources say there are big changes here too.
Yes, this is pretty significant for that segment of the industry, recognizing their different operational reality. Historically, the short-haul exemption had tighter limits. Drivers using it were capped at a 12-hour workday and had to stay within a 100 air-mile radius of their home base.
And what's changed for 2025?
Two main things. First, the maximum workday for drivers operating under this exemption is extended from 12 hours to 14 hours.
Okay, so they now align with the standard 14-hour on-duty clock.
Exactly. That gives local operations 2 extra hours in their daily window, which can make a huge difference with delivery schedules, traffic, things like that.
And the second change?
The geographic radius is expanded. It goes from 100 air miles to 150 air miles.
Wow, 50 extra miles. That really pushes out the definition of local, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. For businesses near major metro areas or in more spread out regions, that extra 50 miles could mean covering significantly more territory, serving more customers, without needing to comply with the full, more complex long-haul HOS rules, including ELDs.
Right, let's talk about that. The ELD implication, electronic logging devices.
That's the regulatory kicker, yeah.
Yeah.
Drivers who qualify for and operate completely within this expanded short-haul exemption, staying within 150 air miles, finishing within 14 hours, starting and ending at the same location, generally don't need to use an ELD.
They can still use paper logs.
They usually use time records or paper logs, yeah. which, for smaller fleets especially, is a huge relief. ELDs represent a significant cost and administrative burden, so this exemption is valuable.
Okay, so more flexibility with the 73 split, more time and range for short haul sounds like positives. But the compliance aspect feels like it's getting trickier, maybe. What are the real teeth in these rules if you break them?
The consequences are serious, and they stack up. It's rarely just one penalty. Fines are the obvious starting point, could be hundreds, could be thousands of dollars per violation. But it gets worse fast.
How so?
Well, as we mentioned, the driver can be put out of service immediately, usually for 10 hours, right where they are stopped. That means the truck isn't moving, the load is delayed, the customer is unhappy, the carrier loses revenue. That's the immediate operational hit.
Okay.
Then there's the bigger picture damage. HOS violations hit the carrier's CSA score hard. A poor score makes insurance premiums skyrocket. And big shippers, the ones with the lucrative contracts, they look at those CSA scores very closely. A bad safety rating means you start losing business fast.
And I assume if there's an accident.
If there's an accident and HOS violations are found, the liability becomes massive. Lawsuits, reputational ruin, can literally destroy company. Compliance isn't optional, it's survival.
So given those high stakes, how do fleets and drivers stay compliant, especially with these new complexities? What are the key strategies?
Technology is definitely number one now. Using ELDs effectively is crucial. Good ELD systems don't just record hours. They should provide warnings before a driver gets close to a limit. They act as a proactive compliance tool.
So leveraging the tech, what else?
Training. Constant good training. Especially with things like the 73 split, you can't just do a quick memo. Drivers need to understand the scenarios, how to log it perfectly, what not to do, engaging training, not just ticking a box.
Makes sense.
And then there's the operational side. Smart dispatching and planning. It's not just about the fastest route anymore. Dispatch needs to plan routes considering HOS limits, knowing where safe and legal parking is for breaks or the 10-hour reset, building in buffer time for delays.
And communication.
Huge.
Yeah.
Creating a culture where drivers feel comfortable reporting fatigue or saying, hey, I'm running close on my hours without fearing punishment. That open dialogue is a vital safety layer.
Okay, let's look down the road a bit, future-proofing. The sources touched on how technology might change things even more. What's on the horizon?
Well, compliance tech is getting smarter. We're seeing more talk about AI-powered monitoring. Software that doesn't just track hours but analyzes patterns. Is a driver constantly pushing their limits? Are they frequently using the adverse conditions exception? AI could potentially flag risky behaviors or systemic issues before they lead to violations or accidents.
Interesting. Proactive analysis.
Yeah, moving beyond just recording to predicting and preventing. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, autonomous vehicle technology. HOS rules are built around human drivers needing rest. What happens when the truck drives itself, even partially?
How is on duty even defined then if the driver is just monitoring?
Exactly. The FMCSA is already starting to think about this. How do you regulate hours when the driver's role shifts from steering to supervising? It's going to require a fundamental rethink of HOS down the line.
So could HOS eventually move away from just tracking time and more towards measuring actual driver alertness or wellness?
That seems like a logical direction, yes. We're already seeing progressive fleets invest heavily in driver wellness programs, focusing on sleep health, nutrition, mental well-being. They recognize that a healthy, well-rested driver is inherently safer and more compliant. It's a long-term strategy that aligns with safety goals.
And broader trends like green tech.
That plays in too. Things like electric trucks needing charging infrastructure or hydrogen fuel stops. That all influences route planning, where drivers can stop, and ultimately how regulations might adapt to support new technologies while still ensuring rest.
Okay, so wrapping this up, it feels like the 2025 HOS changes are really about refinement, giving the industry some requested tools, the 73 split, the short haul expansion, to better manage that rigid 14-hour clock.
Right, more flexibility, but in exchange, the demand for precision and logging and compliance is even higher.
It's a trade-off.
Absolutely. And understanding these rules, executing them correctly, it's not just about avoiding fines. It's fundamental to safety. It's that superhero recharge plan, like we said, protecting the driver, the public, the cargo, everything.
So we'll leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. With these new flexibility options, like the 73 split and the bigger short haul radius, what's the biggest challenge for fleets now? Is it balancing that fixed 14-hour duty clock against the temptation to push operations right to the edge of what these new flexible rules allow? Does more flexibility actually make things safer and more efficient, or does it just create more opportunities for errors and violations if systems and people aren't absolutely perfect? Where's that balance point? Something to think about. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.